Okay, last tutorial of today for review, and I just have drawn a set of 4 sort of typical conditions that I see in your plans and one that you're struggling with. In terms of cutting a section, you can see where our section cuts are here, and having it an aperture and elevation with various conditions and not being so sure how to draw it, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through each one of these one by one, and we'll talk about what you see. I'm going to start with the simplest, and I'm going to work my way up to the most complex. Okay, so we'll just start with this first condition, which if I've cut a section, all right, and I'm somewhere behind this wall, and I'm looking at that wall in elevation through my section, I'm going to see that aperture there. All right, so really, I'm just going to draw up. First of all, let me just draw my ground, my sill, my header, and my ceiling. That's all I really need for this, and then I'm going to draw my registration lines up. Okay? And so, if I assume I'm cutting through the ceiling and the floor, I'll just have these cut lines for that. And because there's nothing else happening on this flat wall, I'm just going to see this aperture here, jamb, header, and sill, just like that. Now I can clarify that in an overlay. I'll even draw the ground line for you and the roof. Okay. So essentially, we'd have the ceiling and the roof line. We can forget what's happening left and right. We'd have the floor line, and the ground might be somewhere down here. Okay? And that aperture just floats. Just floats there in that wall. Okay? These lines do not extend to the ceiling, they don't come down to the floor, it just floats. It's because I don't have anything else happening in front of me in terms of that wall that's in elevation. It's just flat, and really sort of perpendicular to my view. So, if you look at the plan again, okay? It's real simple. That's what I see. Don't be confused by that, okay? So let's look at this second condition, and that is where the aperture actually comes, is embedded in this wall, and then there's another wall that comes in, so there's a kind of a corner there, maybe a 90-degree corner, all right? And that aperture comes right up to that corner, all right? So, in that condition, if we draw our floor line, our ceiling, maybe we draw a roof, we have our sill and our header, okay? And we pull up these registration lines. That is the edge of my aperture or my window, but it is also in line, as we can see, with that wall, right? It's in the same location. So I'm going to see that later. This jamb, right, comes up, and I can do that as a set of construction lines, all right? So now to clarify this, I'll even draw the roof and the ground. I don't have to worry about what's left or right. These are just diagrams, okay? So here's my floor. I'll even draw the ground in here. It's down there somewhere. I'll draw my ceiling line and my roof, okay? We don't have to worry about what's left and what's right, okay? Don't have to worry about what's left and what's right. And now I have this header, this jamb, and this sill, but if you remember, we're on that corner. So I'm going to see the corner. I'm going to see the corner of this wall, right? All the way from the ceiling to the floor. And so, in terms of condition number 2, where I have this wall that creates a corner at my window frame, okay? That is what I will see in elevation. On the left side, I'm not seeing my jambs extend up and my jambs extend down. I'm seeing the corner of that wall right here. And I'm seeing my header and my jamb on the right side, which does not extend up or down, and the sill. And that's number 2. Okay? Number 3, it's a lot like number 1. It's a little bit trickier though. And a couple people got confused by this. Just pay attention to where those section cut lines are in here, because I think people were confused about where the sections were being taken. Here you can see really clearly that my section cut is back in the building here somewhere. And so I'm seeing this set of walls with this opening, right? It's just a pass through into another space. I'm seeing that in elevation, but I'm also going to see whatever I happen to see through that threshold, which will be that aperture, right? And we can see that they line up with each other. And so people were getting confused by that. I'm not cutting in here, okay? I'm cutting behind that over here. And so I'm not going to see these 2 walls. I'm going to see these 2 walls. I'm going to look through that opening, and I'm going to see that aperture behind or beyond, okay? And so I'm going to draw these registration lines up so that it's clear and you can see them. I mean, you can see how the corners of these this opening, these jambs at the frame of that opening correspond or align with the jambs, the frame of that window that's beyond my cut here, okay? And so if I draw my ground, my floor, my sill, my header, my ceiling, my roof, right? And I extend these up, and I come back in, I don't worry about what's left and right. I'm just going to cut through what I know I'm cutting through right here at this moment. I'm cutting through my roof package, my ceiling and my roof line. I'm cutting through my floor, and I'm cutting through my ground, which is down there somewhere, okay? And now I'm going to see 2 things. I'm going to see this opening, which shares a header with that. That goes all the way to ground, okay? And they also share jambs, all right? So what I'm going to see is that opening there, and then I'm going to see the bottom sill probably much lighter behind me, or in front of me rather, all the way back. So I'm going to show you, to clarification, what that looks like. Right, I'll draw it in a kind of a layer for you. So ground, floor, don't worry about what's left and right. This is just a hypothetical moment of a hypothetical plan. There's my cut. I'm going to draw this opening down here first, and it comes from the ground up to the header, goes across, comes down. That's that doorway. So that's layer number 1. I see that doorway, but there's something behind it or beyond it, okay, in the section, which is that aperture, which is in the space beyond the cut, okay? And I'm going to do that with a much lighter line weight. I can't see the header of that aperture because it's in line with the header of the doorway aperture, but I can see the sill, and it's just going to be much lighter, right? And so that's what we would see in elevation there, okay? Now I'm going to modify this plan a little bit. Now I'm working on it just to talk about what happens if there's a corner here, because some people got confused by that. And so it's an opening for sure, but it is also now these walls, so I've got an edge of a wall which will go all the way up to the roof, okay? And so to bring back the plan we were just working on, it is essentially the same. It's essentially the same plan, with the exception now that somehow I'm cutting through these walls right here, okay? And let's just make them in the cut line so we're all clear about that, Okay, so we'll just cut right through them. Okay, and with an overlay, all right, I will clarify this. Hopefully this isn't too confusing. I know I'm moving around a lot of paper, but you can always stop. You can always stop. You can always back up. You can always rewatch. Good. Okay, so I imagine I'm just going to cut through those walls now. Okay, let's rework this section. So in here, right at the jamb, I'm going to have a section cut line, okay, basically, that I'm cutting through. I'm going to have two walls, one on each side of that, opening these two walls that I'm cutting through. I'm going to assume I'm still inside the building, and so I still have floor and I still have ceiling. My ground's still down here someplace. And obviously I'm going to still have roof, okay? And then again, I'm going to see the header for the doorway that's back here, which also corresponds or lines up with the header for that aperture. And then I'm going to see that aperture really lightly. And so there's a variation on the theme, what I might see in that condition, okay? And there are other ways to look at that too. And so if you're confused still about what it is we're looking through, let me just do the condition that I'm thinking about while I'm making this video. We're going to move this section line. How about this just does something like that, moves its way around, okay? And my section line now moves out here and I'm looking that way, okay? So I'm not cutting through those walls, and I'm seeing this kind of corridor, which is not a doorway and doesn't have headers, right? And I can see that beyond me. That happened in a plan that somebody got confused by in one of my last tutorials. And so I'm just going to draw that real quick so that everybody understands that. Again, all these lines overlap, so that's good. I'm going to draw my ground. I'm going to draw my floor, I'm going to draw my sill, my header, my ceiling, and my roof, okay? I'm going to draw these up. And then because I'm out in space down here, really, and I'm looking up at this section, I'm going to see the edge of that wall, the edge of that wall, and that's now going to become a corner, right? So these two lines are going to become corners that go all the way from the floor to the ceiling, and then I'm going to see that aperture beyond. So I'm going to see the header of that aperture and the sill of it, okay, but not the jambs. Let's see if I can get this drawn quickly. So again, I'm not going to worry about the fact that there's a left and a right to this plane right now. I'm just going to cut through what I know would be cut through, okay? I'm going to cut through my floor, my ground, which is down there somewhere, and my roof, okay? Now everything else in this, because I'm not cutting through walls, should be drawn with a lighter line. And really what I'm going to see is floor to ceiling, and then I'm going to see this header, and then I'm going to see that sill. And that is the aperture beyond. And then clarify that without all the construction lines. And then we're done. And you can enjoy your weekend. Okay, so there's my roof package, my floor, my ground, okay? I'm gonna see these walls in elevation, and I'm just picking up these corners down here, and then I'm gonna see the header and the sill of that aperture here, okay? And that's what that looks like in that condition, right? And actually I've got one more of these to do. Sorry this one's taking so long. But I want to be really clear about how these work. This one by now should be fairly clear to most people. It is a little bit strange in terms of the fact that it's got a kind of corner that moves off at an angle, and the aperture or the window is right inside or meets that corner. And so because of that weird angle, I think people don't know exactly what to do, but it doesn't matter if it's at an angle. It's going to work exactly like this one does, right? Because that corner is a hard fold in the building, and so we're still going to see it from floor, right? So I'm just going to draw my ground, my floor, my sill, my header, my ceiling, and my roof. I'm going to pull this line up inside the elevation. That'll go from floor to ceiling, and this line up, which really will just be my jamb. I'm going to draw my ceiling package, my roof package rather, ceiling and roof line. I'm going to draw my floor line. I'm going to draw my ground line. Not going to worry about what's left and right. It's just a hypothetical section of a hypothetical plan. Okay? And then that section's done, and all I really need to do is clarify it with an overlay. Roof package, floor, ground. Okay? And now I'm going to read that corner. Took the underlay out just so you could see this condition. I'm going to read that corner all the way from the floor to the ceiling, because it's a wall right there that is curving around, or not curving but folding at that moment. And then my sill will be here, my header will be here, and I'm going to read that jamb right there. So the right side of that aperture just floats in that wall. There's nothing there. And you can go back to condition number 2 that we looked at, and you'll see that it's exactly the same. Okay, even though they look different. Number 2, number 4, same drawing.